Welcome to the Cantina Chatter podcast. Hello and welcome to the Cantina Chatter podcast. My name is Victoria and I will be your host on this galactic adventure through Star Wars, toys and collectibles, pop culture, and randomness from the 80s and 90s. And welcome to the Cantina Chatter podcast. Great to have everybody back for another discussion of all things toys, all things Star Wars. And to help me do that, again, we have Dave. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Victoria, all things considered. Really happy to be back on the podcast. Give me something to do while we're in lockdown here. I haven't been seeing any friends in real life, so it's going to be awesome to chat with you and talk some Star Wars.
Yeah, totally. And, I think it's been a while since, you've been on here. I think it might have even been last year, right? It was like December.
I think it was, right at the end of the year, I guess, now that I think about it.
Yeah, we were talking Mandalorian and, we were chronicling, every couple episodes. We were coming together and talking about, how those episodes were playing out and how we felt about them. But we're going to do the same thing now, but it's going to be for the Clone Wars. This series that has been running for 12 years, and it's pretty crazy. Not only that it's ran for 12 years, but how it's evolved and changed and really affected Star Wars as, just a central part of that, Star Wars lore. So, we're gonna break it down. We're gonna react to season 7 and the last few episodes, and I'm looking forward to talking some Clone Wars.
Yeah, me too.
So you've been watching Disney Gallery on Disney Plus?
Yes, I have. It's really interesting. I really like that.
Yeah, I watched the second episode this morning. So this season, they're focusing on Mandalorian. It's basically the behind the scenes and making of the Mandalorian, listening to everybody, the directors and everyone involved in the production talk about, how it came to be. So it's really interesting to listen to it, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I haven't got to the second episode yet, but that first episode was really cool to hear. The behind the scenes stories. I really liked the story where Filoni recounted meeting Lucas and getting the job, and it's just cool to see the perspective from all the directors, what they bring to the table.
Yeah, it is, and you got to see the second episode. It's pretty awesome. Just listening to Dave Filoni, explain Star Wars basically, and he breaks it down in a way that, it's very obvious that he understands Star Wars and what it means to him personally, but having, worked directly under George Lucas, obviously, he has such a clarity about Star Wars, and the way that he conveys, the story of Star Wars is just, it's pretty amazing. And I think anybody that, especially maybe those who don't really understand Star Wars or never seen it, I think all you really need to do is listen to his take, the way he discusses it to really kind of get it and, maybe make you interested in wanting to see Star Wars.
Oh yeah, definitely. You definitely get the idea that he's really trained and tutored by George. I don't know if you got to watch the Star Wars show the other week where they had a little interview at the end with George and Dave Filoni, but that was real neat.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah.
That was really cool, and the way they pick on each other and everything. It's kind of funny.
Yeah,
you could tell
like the old master and the young apprentice. It was like a Star Wars relationship. It was funny.
Yeah, totally. But no, it's great. And, like we've said before, we're in a period where there's just so much Star Wars content, and it's all great. If, I know we enjoyed the films and, the latest round of films, and a lot of people didn't, which is fine. But, even if you didn't, there's so much Star Wars going around. You have the Clone Wars, you have the Mandalorian, Resistance wrapped up. I don't know if it was earlier this year or late last year that it wrapped up, but I finally got around to finishing it on Disney Plus. And, there's just so much stuff. There's so much stuff to take in and, talk about and enjoy. So plenty of Star Wars out there. And, it's definitely a great time to be a fan.
Yeah, definitely more coming. And it's going to be pick your flavor pretty soon. There's going to be something for everyone, I believe.
I can't wait. I cannot wait for the Cassian Andor series, for Mandalorian season 2, for the Kenobi series, like any of. I mean, I'm just totally on board. I cannot wait.
Yeah.
So, all right. So season 7 of the Clone Wars. This was a long time in the making. Obviously, season 6, which when season 6 came out, it wasn't billed as season 6. It was just kind of billed as the Lost Missions, and that came out on Netflix. I think it was 2014. And those were basically the last episodes in the series. And for a while, nobody thought that Clone Wars was going to ever get picked up again because, obviously Disney, took over Lucasfilm, and they, at the time they had other things that were in development. They were developing the 3D versions of the films that were being put out in theaters. The Phantom Menace did come out in, it was 2012, right? Early 2012 that came out.
I don't remember, to be honest.
I think it was 2012.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that came out, and the plan was that every year they were going to do a 3D film for the original 2 trilogies in theaters. And, when Disney took over, they started developing, episodes 7, 8, 9. So that got, that didn't happen. And then Clone Wars got put on hold, or ultimately put on hold. Yeah, it got axed. It's pretty remarkable that Clone Wars did come back, but again, it was a long time in the making, but finally it did. And if it hadn't, we wouldn't be here talking about the greatness of, particularly the last part of the season. But having a season 7 at all was pretty much an amazing thing.
Yeah, I kind of think Disney, when they first bought and that transition time, I think they were looking to get away from anything prequels. Maybe it had a stigma out there that it wasn't very good, and I guess those people hadn't ever watched the Clone Wars. But yes, when the Force Awakens and Rebels came out, it was all about getting back to the basics and the A New Hope aesthetics and things, I guess. And yeah, like you said, they canceled it. We got the last season on Netflix, and yeah, I'm really happy to see the love for the prequels come back around these last few years. Hasbro putting more toys out there, prequel focused, and really people diving back into these stories, because for me, the Clone Wars is the best of the prequels, and it really fills in a whole lot in there. And I'm glad to see the love again. I'm glad we got a season 7 and we're back at it, and we got it to close out in a really satisfying way.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that you highlight there about the Clone Wars is that it's really been something that's added to particularly the prequels, but it's really added a whole lot to Star Wars. And going back 15, 20 years, there were a lot of people that weren't happy with the prequels, particularly older fans that were kids when the originals came out. I saw the originals first. I was in the first. I saw them when they brought the special editions back to theaters. I think it was 97, I think it was. And then I saw the prequels, but I already had that familiarity. So I was still a kid, basically, when the prequels came out. But, I mean, at the time, I didn't hate them. I didn't love them the way the way I did the originals. But, there were things about them that I really did enjoy. But that maybe wasn't the consensus for the older fans. A lot of people didn't think it wasn't what they really expected. So with Clone Wars, they've had an opportunity to kind of go back and flesh out some of the things, some of the threads that were woven like between, the prequels, like the Sifo-Dyas stuff, like the clones, like the Jedi and the politics and all that stuff. When you're looking at a 2-hour film, there's only so much time you can have to focus to any of one of those things. But when you're dealing with season 7 or 7 seasons of a show, you really have a lot of time to delve into that and, break it down and kind of explore it a little more in depth. And I think that's where it really came through is by being able to do that and really giving a lot more, character to a lot of these characters that were in the films.
Yeah. It really, I think, was Lucasfilm's really first time on screen diving into something other than the Skywalker saga. And like you say, the prequel films really were dealing with Obi-Wan and Anakin and the Skywalker saga. And there's a huge sprawling galaxy to be dealt with here. And this is the first time that we went and we get a humanities side of the clones. We meet new characters like Ahsoka. We see bits of the underworld and bounty hunters and Cad Bane and things like that. And that's kind of where we are now with the live action shows. So the show really was, in Lucas fashion, pioneering again, getting us to where we are today. And I guess I mentioned I had watched again that Star Wars show interview. And that's what Filoni was saying, Lucas was saying, was pushing, if this was on a streaming service, this is the future. And he could see that coming. And it's really great to see him, after all these years, still pioneering.
Yeah, totally. It's very awesome. So let's talk season 7. So when we get back into season 7, and these premiered in February, I think it was, right? February this year. We were kind of thrown into it was the Bad Batch episodes where Clone Force 99, these wacky clones that are unlike any clones that we've met before in Clone Wars, and they basically come together to help execute these missions that have been going pretty poorly for the Republic. So when these came out, a lot of people were like, and I felt this way too, like, hey, these episodes are kind of weird. We waited this long for Clone Wars to return, but these aren't maybe the greatest episodes. But from my understanding is that these were episodes that had already been in development before Clone Wars was even canceled. Is that your understanding as well?
Yeah, I believe these were released on YouTube in their unfinished version shortly after the cancellation of Clone Wars. I never watched them. I maybe for a couple of minutes put them on, but I just couldn't stand the unfinished animation and the wonkiness of it and stuff. But yes, to my understanding, I guess these first about 4 episodes were already in some form of unfinished state before they booted back up again.
Yeah, and I know they made some changes to them from what I heard, but yeah. So, what was your take on these? Because I always didn't. I know some people don't love the clone-centric episodes from the previous seasons. I kind of did because I've always loved the clones, and I mean, especially the toys. I mean, you just gravitate towards. Oh, look, there's all these variety of clones and different colored armor, and they go into battle against these, robots, and they're led by Jedi. I mean, when you just say that, I mean, it's just pretty awesome. But then when you see it, it takes it to a whole other level. So I mean, I really like the idea of, following the clones, getting to know them a little bit better. So what was your take on those first episodes of the season?
Yeah, the first, 2-3 episodes, I was really on board. I enjoy clone-centric episodes. I don't remember what the name of the episodes were, but the ones before where they would show them doing their training on Camino, and the episodes, with Fives and them learning about the chip in their head. I really enjoyed that. And it was really cool now to be let in that there's other clones out there that didn't take right or whatever, and they have even more specialized abilities. And I was really enjoying the dynamic of the crew and the power structure they had amongst each other and how they interacted with Rex. And I was real on board for the first 2-3 episodes. And maybe it was the hype of Clone Wars coming back, but I was really excited.
Yeah, it was really cool to have it back. I mean, no matter what they gave us, I think, that was going to be the case. It had been at least 6 years since we had any new Star Wars, brand new Clone Wars content. So I think no matter what they gave us, it was an exciting time. The Clone Wars are back when you pop it on, Disney Plus, and then you have that, the soundtrack, and you see the Clone Wars fading into space. And
love that, yeah.
You have the recap, what's going on in Star Wars, and then, you get right down to it. It's really cool. I mean, I'm sure you followed Clone Wars, back when it was on originally, right?
Actually, I was aware it was on, and I guess it was the age I was at. I was interested in playing in bands and stuff, and I know my sister-in-law watched it when it was on Cartoon Network, and I kind of paid attention, but I guess it was around the time when Rebels started up, and it was on Netflix is when I kind of was watching it and actually paid more attention to it and been like, wow, this is pretty amazing. But yeah, I mean, I didn't quite hit me and was like, oh, this is animated. Is this for kids or something? I guess is how I felt when I was younger. But yeah, so I was aware it was on. I just didn't pay as much attention to it as I have in the last, I don't know, half decade or so.
Okay, then you're making me feel less bad because I was kind of in a similar boat.
Yeah.
I did see the film in theaters in 2008 when that came out, but then I didn't have a... I'm trying to remember. This was a really long time ago, obviously, but I had just moved to California in 2008, and I was, where I was living. I don't remember if we had cable or not. We may have, but we never really were able to watch. I was never really able to watch TV because there were kids, and I was just never really able to get to it. So I streamed a couple of the episodes. I know Cartoon Network was streaming them over the internet for a little while. So up to a point, I was able to watch them. But then when they stopped doing that, or at some point, it wasn't happening anymore. So it kind of just fell by the wayside. And meanwhile, as all the toys were coming out for Clone Wars, and a lot of them were great. But as many toys as they were making for Star Wars, like Clone Wars at the time, they were making just as many toys for like the movie versions of Star Wars too. So I was I had to be very selective at the time, especially because, like I said, I had just relocated. I was working at Toys R Us, and, I just had to be really selective with my purchases. So I didn't really focus a whole lot on Clone Wars, the toys back then. I wish I had now, because I did miss a lot of stuff that I've acquired a lot of it over the years, but I haven't. There's a lot that I missed out on. But no, it's something that I really, really got into, like you, years later when it did come out, when the Lost Missions came out on Netflix, and I went back and bought the Blu-rays for, all the seasons, and I was able to really sit down and go through all of them. And I kind of felt, I kind of felt a little bit bad that I had missed out on them, initially, because I really loved the Clone Wars. And as time has gone on, I think I've grown to love it even more, because, we've had more content in the animated form. We've had Rebels, we've had Resistance, and Rebels especially, kind of it builds on certain elements from Clone Wars. The Ahsoka stuff, the Maul stuff, the Rex stuff, all that stuff, is fleshed out further in Rebels. So, I don't know where I was really going with this, but
I guess what you're trying to say is, I think it's kind of almost like the MCU. I know watching this for the first time, the first season is out of order. It's a little confusing. You kind of jump right in. You're not sure who these characters are, and I guess it was around the third season I stuck with it, and I was like, this is really getting interesting. Loved it, everything from there on out, from the third season forward. And then I did go back with it being on Disney Plus, and I watched I think the first and second season again. And there's so much there. And if you watch them in order, I guess Star Wars website has a list of how you can watch them in chronological order. And it makes a lot more sense. And then because you know where these characters are going, and it was there from the beginning, it just takes a little time, I guess, for my brain to catch up and realize what they're doing. And like you say, all these arcs for these characters, some of them bleed into Rebels. And going back again now, you really can appreciate it as a whole. It's really masterfully put together.
Yeah, and that is one thing. They did air out of order, especially that first season. So there is a list on StarWars.com, and it's been up there for a long time now. But I did follow that when I went back to watch all of them. I did use that list, and it's really helpful because it really once you have the list and you start watching them in that order, I mean, things make a lot more sense. There's actually threads that are carried, because if you don't do that, unfortunately, things happen after a battle that hasn't taken place yet. So some of those things won't make a whole lot of sense. But once you go back and do that, and you do rewatch it, and you look at everything that it developed. I mean, it's clear not only that Clone Wars was really its own self-contained adventure that really adds to the lore of Star Wars, but it also really builds upon the themes and the characters and everything that we've had from the film versions of Star Wars.
Yeah, the Clone Wars for me, that's my favorite portrayal of Anakin. I'd say for number one for me coming out of this series is I really connect and feel with the character of Anakin. Watching the prequel trilogy, I connected more with Obi-Wan and Padme, and I just didn't quite get what's going on in Anakin's head. But they do a good job of filling it in, and I really feel in season 7 they do a lot of things to address the transition from the Clone Wars Anakin that we know into the Revenge of the Sith. Because I think I said to you when we had talked last year, speculating that I wasn't quite sure how this is going to jive, because it sometimes feels like two separate characters for me. But there were some moments towards the end of season 7 with Anakin that I really felt like you could really see where his head was going and how the character we know here in Clone Wars becomes the Anakin in Revenge of the Sith. Yeah,
no, that's really well put. And that's one of the things I think Clone Wars excelled at was, building on Anakin's character, because I mean, we get Anakin for 3 movies, but you start off with him as a little kid. I mean, if you're watching Phantom Menace as somebody that's older than maybe like 15, you're not really going to connect with it the same way with him. If you're watching it, you know, maybe as a kid and you're watching him in Attack of the Clones as an adult, basically, you're not going to maybe connect with him the same way. So we get him in 3 films, but he's kind of at a different point in each film, especially, you know, between episodes 1 and 2. But then even 2 and 3, you know, his personality is obviously a little bit different. He's a lot more confident. He's a lot more independent. He's kind of, you know, he's developed all the powers that you see him develop, you know, over the course of Clone Wars. So it really did wonders for building his character, and I have a much greater appreciation for the backstory of Darth Vader and Anakin because of everything that the Clone Wars gave us in building his character up.
Yeah, I think you and I are the similar age, and with the prequels movies is really kind of when I like came of age, and I was in 3 different stages of my life during the 3 movies, and it was kind of hard to follow and also pay attention like I can now as an adult. Maybe I felt like I was a little too cool for school, I guess, when Clone Wars or Attack of the Clones came into theaters, and then I was right back on board with Revenge of the Sith. And it is, like you say, he's a different character. He goes from a child to a Padawan to a master, and this does a great job of filling in the in-between.
It does. And, you know, not only that, but adding to Star Wars, really unlike any way we've experienced before, because like I said before, the films only have so much time to flesh out, you know, the Republic, to flesh out the Separatists, to get into Dooku's, you know, like story, like what's he doing, what's he really doing, like behind the scenes, you know, Grievous, Asajj Ventress, and, you know, some of these characters, you know, now that I mentioned Ventress, were created during the Clone Wars microseries, the Genndy Tartakovsky series, that was also on Cartoon Network. I think the first one's premiered in 2003, like August or so. And then the rest of them came out, I think it was in 2005, before Revenge of the Sith. So some of the characters that got created for that, which we only saw, they were basically a blip on the map in the totality of Star Wars, really got fleshed out. And we really got to know Ventress, we really got to know Grievous, and we really got to see more of the backstories of those characters too.
Definitely. Yeah, getting back to season 7, the way the Bad Batch arc kind of wrapped up, where we get to see a lot of Rex's point of view, and how he still has faith that his friend is still alive, that Echo is still there, was really cool. And I think the visuals this season coming back, you can tell they amped up the art style, and the visuals were much more cinematic, and it was really great to see how the Bad Batch arc wrapped up just visually. But maybe this is the point in the season where I don't know why I do this a lot with Filoni. I start to lose faith. I'm like, where's this going? This isn't Ahsoka. This isn't what I was promised. But in the end, it comes together, and you see why he writes this in, and where we're going, because it really does tie up nicely at the end of the season. Yeah,
totally. And, you know, for a series that's called Clone Wars, I mean, and has explored, you know, the clones in depth over the course of the 7 seasons, you know, it kind of felt right to have some element in there that was rooted in the mythology of the clones and how they came to be, and, you know, what really is going on with them. Because, you know, like I said, these are a batch of clones that have unique abilities. And you don't see that in the films, obviously. Clones are clones, you know, there's different battalions, but ultimately, you know, they're all clones. And you know, Clone Wars has really been able to add to those, you know, clones, make them into characters rather than just being clones. And, you know, seeing the full breadth of what that clone spectrum has is interesting. And I think, you know, getting an arc of that was kind of clone specific was pretty important.
Yeah. The whole series with the clones, it's interesting. It goes back, I guess, to Lucas always talking about institutions, and we see the clone army as an institution, but we really get to peek behind the curtain and see the humanity and the individuality of all these clones, and, you know, having the same voice actor for all of them, but it's just beautifully put together. You know each character individually, whether it's Rex or Fives or Echo or, you know, any of these. It's amazing.
No, it was really great, really entertaining stuff. And you know, not quite as interesting, obviously, as you know, things that were going to come up later in the season, but I think that's only natural because, you know, they were trying to bring it to a close. So it only makes sense that you'd save that really exciting stuff for the end. But I'm glad we got to see, you know, what was, you know, happening with the clones and, you know, kind of go on a little side adventure with them. And it was interesting, though, when you think about it, that, you know, we didn't get a whole, other than Ahsoka and like Maul and that stuff, we didn't really get a whole lot of like Jedi-centric stuff. But, you know, like I said, I think these were threads that they were kind of fleshing out before, you know, the series was canceled. So
yeah, a lot of that was kind of wrapped up in I guess the Lost missions in season 6. A lot of the stuff there with Yoda and stuff, and
yeah,
so I didn't miss it as much, and
yeah, absolutely. So then, as we get further into the season, so after those initial episodes, so then, you know, Ahsoka came back. And I think this is kind of when I really got the feels, was watching, you know, Clone Wars and having Ahsoka back on screen for the first time since, you know, when was it that she left? Was it like season 4 or season 5?
Yeah, it's been so long.
Yeah, so just like having like new like Clone Wars content on television basically with Ahsoka, I really got the feels from that because, you know, we hadn't seen her in so long, and, you know, the way that they had built her character over the course of those, you know, the initial run of the series. You know, just being able to see what she was up to during this time where, you know, she was away from the Jedi, and you know, where it was all going was an interesting prospect, and you know, just having her back, I thought was really cool.
Oh yeah, this is the point where we get to meet Trace and Rafa, where Ahsoka is living in the underground and stuff. And I guess this is what I was saying earlier, where this is the first time for me I'm experiencing this weekly. You know, we were able to binge it the first time around. Yeah. And like I fall into this, and other people too, where you start to go, oh, this is just filler, Filoni. This is no good. This isn't as fun. But again, like I've been saying a bunch of times, it comes together. It's tied together, and it's kind of it was annoying for me, I guess, to be left on the edge of my seat with these episodes and have to wait another week to see how they get out of jail or what Ahsoka's going to do. And maybe my patience started to wear a little bit here, thinking, is this what we were promised in the trailers or not? But again, looking back, it was really well done.
Yeah, no, I hear you there. I kind of felt the same way. As much as I loved having Ahsoka, I felt like there was a little bit of repetitiveness with that arc. You know, they were constantly being imprisoned. They were constantly trying to escape. And I felt like that just took up a bulk of what we were seeing. So, I mean, that was cool and all, but I don't know. I kind of felt like they could have been doing a little bit more with that. But I was watching an interview with Filoni with, I think it was Entertainment Weekly. I was going to say Entertainment Earth. Entertainment Weekly the other day. And, Entertainment Tonight. And he was talking about, you know, why those episodes were essential. And, I mean, it kind of made sense. Like you said, you know, he was trying to build upon like Ahsoka's like arc that would carry into those last few episodes. And, you know, kind of build on her character. So, I mean, I think they achieved that. But, you know, like you, I think it did drag on a little at times. It felt a little bit long.
That last episode of the Trace arc, I guess we can call it, is where it really came together when they revealed the part about the Jedi accidentally killing their parents. And especially the part when they find out Ahsoka is an ex-Jedi. And it's kind of almost like they do an about face. Well, like, this is how we really feel. Like, why you can do that? You can leave. That's when it was, for me, kind of like a facepalm moment. Like, oh, I get it now. I get why we were here for these 4 episodes. And it really paid off. Like, I was kind of bored until I got to that last 4.
Yeah. There were some interesting things too. I'm sure you noticed that in one of those episodes they were finding like a Trandoshan, and it happened to make raptor sounds from Jurassic Park.
Yeah, that was hilarious. I forgot about that. I was watching with my wife, and she was commenting the same thing too. That, I guess around that time, there was a lot of stuff on Twitter about. I didn't ever realize how many Jurassic Park sounds and Star Wars sounds are interchangeable. You got what is it? The Rathtar. I'm sorry. The Rancor has some of the Tyrannosaurus sounds that they used later on in Jurassic Park, and there's the Parasaurolophus sounds from the Lost World are used in Mandalorian. It's just pretty cool.
yeah, totally. They definitely, you know, Lucasfilm having a hand in all these different projects. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to reuse certain sound effects is most people probably aren't going to notice. We're going to notice, but your general moviegoer might not notice. But yeah, no, it was it was interesting stuff, and wasn't it cool being able to see Kessel again?
Yeah, I enjoyed that a lot. Also, just the characters. I saw some people complaining about Trace and Ratha, and I really liked them. They felt relatable, like real Earth people. And you were seeing, like, Star Wars from their point of view, like how we're seeing it. I enjoyed them. And they felt like girls next door, or someone that you would know in real life. And I saw some people complaining about them, and I didn't share it the same. I thought they were nice.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think that's one thing that's important not to lose sight of in Star Wars is that, it's not just Jedi and Sith and the Republic and Separatists. There's also like regular people that are living their day-to-day life, like, in this universe and, just trying to get through, one day to the next. So whenever they show things like that, and I think Han Solo kind of represented that in the original trilogy. But, just kind of showing that in Clone Wars, I think is pretty pertinent to touch on, and I think they did that pretty well by incorporating them into the series.
Yeah, most definitely.
So yeah, anything else you want to mention about that this little bit here? I guess we get this is where we got introduced also to Maul, right? That he's still around.
Yeah. At the end, Bo-Katan shows up at the end here, and she just helps him out, helps Ahsoka get out of some trouble. And that, seeing the Mandalorian, and then I'm thinking Mandalorian series, I'm thinking Dave Filoni, and that's when I was on the edge of my seat, like, where are we going with this, and then finding that we're going back to get Maul, because I guess you had to read the comic, which I haven't read, to find out how Maul got away from Sidious, right? Because as far as we're concerned in the timeline of the show, that's the last time we saw him. So he's out and he's back, and that was really cool, and that's when it started to get things rolling. Yeah,
it's It was neat. I think we all knew Maul was coming back. He featured pretty heavily in the trailers and stuff. But seeing how he got there and having that little bit of a payoff at the end of this Ahsoka Trace Rafa arc, kind of showed us where it was going. Like you said, Bo-Katan came back, and then we knew where the last few episodes of the season were heading, and that was back to Mandalore.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I guess this is episode 9 when this these final 4, this arc started, and I hit play on the day it's released on Disney Plus, and I'm going, something's wrong here. This isn't the beginning of Clone Wars that I've known the whole time. And what's this old logo here? Did a double take, I rewinded. Did I click on the right thing? And that was really neat to see the old Lucasfilm logo and the original Star Wars fanfare play, and I was like, oh, we're in for something here.
Yeah, and what was funny was I got a kick out of that, just like seeing that. I was like, oh, that's so badass. Because, obviously we're old enough to remember what that logo looked like before the prequels. And but it was funny because on Twitter, people were saying, like, why does the logo look like that? What is that? It's just it was hilarious.
Yeah. And you can't fault them. I guess there's a lot of younger people and stuff, and there's no way to legally watch the despecialized editions and see that stuff. So,
sure. Yeah. Unless you have a VHS player.
Yeah. Well, I don't think my friends always had copies, and I don't think I actually have an old school copy. First VHS ones I had were the special editions, I think.
Yeah, I think I had the ones in 95, like right before the toys came back out for, in the modern toy line. Like they re-released them on VHS, and then after that it was the special editions 2 years later. But I had both of those trilogies on VHS, and I think I don't even remember by the time the special editions came out. I want to say they had already changed the Lucasfilm logo, but I don't remember 100%.
I think so, but yeah, I have to check that out.
But in any case, it was a great Easter egg, and I think that's one of the things when you think about who Clone Wars is catering to. Yes, it's ultimately a kids' TV show. Yes, it's on Disney Plus as an animated series, but it's also being run by people that were kids when the original films came out, and at the end of the day, it kind of feels like they're tailoring a lot of it to the older fans as well, and seeing things like that. Those Easter eggs obviously are there for people like us. They're not there for kids who aren't going to recognize the logo or things like that. So I think it's just pretty awesome to have little things like that thrown in.
Yeah, my daughter watched almost this whole season 7 with me, and I think she said something about that, like, because for some reason she doesn't like the traditional beginning where the Clone Wars and the talking, and she noticed that like right away, and it almost seemed like she got more into it, like seeing the Star Wars theme playing and the different logo, and she was really into it, and asking all kinds of questions about Maul and stuff. So yeah.
That's funny. I always thought it'd be interesting if instead of, because I don't think it's Admiral Yularen who's giving us the recap, is it? But it's the same. Obviously, it's James Arnold Taylor that's giving us that little spiel. But I always thought it'd be funny if it was Fode and Bede from the Phantom Menace that were doing that recap.
Yeah.
Because it kind of has that feeling, that kind of sports recap. Oh, first he did this, then he did that, then replaying.
Definitely.
But anyway, yeah. So so this is our first glimpse at reunification between Ahsoka and Anakin and Obi-Wan. Via hologram, she gets in touch with them, and this is kind of where the last part of this adventure kicks off. So. I thought this was emotionally speaking, I thought this was really well executed. Like just like Anakin's reaction and the way that, Obi-Wan is like speaking with her, and, just seeing like after this absence, and we don't know how long the absence was because it's not really made clear, but, assuming that it was at least a year or something, it was pretty kind of powerful to see that reconnection between them.
Yeah, I guess enough time that her appearance has changed. Ahsoka's, she's definitely more mature looking. I think we didn't mention earlier that they're in Obi-Wan and Anakin are in their Revenge of the Sith costumes, so we know we're getting closer to the third movie. And yeah, I think it's Matt Lanter that does the voice of Anakin, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he did a really good performance, I think, kind of. Melding the two versions of the character, as I said previously, and he has a lot of his mannerisms, the way he approaches Anakin, and then especially when he sees Ahsoka for the first time, you get it's kind of a Episode 3 Anakin, and I really appreciated that performance.
Yeah, that's a really good point because I felt that way as well. It feels like it was deliberate this time more than ever, where anytime you saw Anakin, obviously Matt Lanter playing him, like even his like vocal intonation and just the way he was like the way that he was animated, his movements kind of reminded me more of Hayden Christensen's Anakin. Yeah, so I thought that was, it had to have been deliberate, just they were trying to kind of tie it up a little bit better, and I think it kind of confirms it a little bit more as we get into those last couple episodes. But yeah, that was pretty cool. And so Ahsoka goes to Mandalore. She's not a Jedi, but they say, hey, we'll give you half of the 501st. You can take them to Mandalore, and Rex is going to be their commander. You can't be their commander because you're not a Jedi. Which the whole politics of that is very interesting. But I guess that we're at a point in the Clone Wars where they're kind of desperate to get things done, right? I mean,
yeah.
Dooku's already been killed at this point, and we're already in Revenge of the Sith, so. They're just kind of trying to wrap up, these different loose ends, Grievous and Maul, and just kind of get everything contained so that the war can be over. But yeah, so then she ships off to Mandalore, and this is where we begin the hunt for Maul.
Yeah, that was really cool. The way they enter Mandalore, and some of the ships are being shot down, and the way that her and Rex make their way to the surface, that was just thrilling, seeing them jump from ship to ship, and the way she lands and has her lightsabers out. She got back from Anakin. That was a beautiful thing too. Before we skip over that, I that was almost gut wrenching, knowing that was going to be the last time that Anakin and Ahsoka would see each other. And they say "see you later." You know that they're headed off to save the Emperor, like the beginning of Episode 3, and it was so cool just seeing it from a different point of view, knowing that we're here, we're in Episode 3. I know what Anakin and Obi-Wan are doing. Now we're gonna follow Ahsoka, and it just brought everything back, everything that I felt in 2005. It just that heartbreak creeping in, knowing what Anakin is about to do, where he's headed, and seeing the friends split up for the last time. It really got to me.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's in line with what Ahsoka said in Rebels, that the last time she had seen Anakin was when he was rushing off to rescue the Chancellor. So, it tied that up pretty well, and it also, really gave us that, that reconnection that we had been longing for since she left the Jedi Order. Just seeing them on screen together and saying their goodbyes, and Obi-Wan, kind of being Obi-Wan basically. But yeah, and then just you're right. Just the way like he hands her the case with the lightsabers, and saying he improved them, and it was just done really well. It wasn't overdone. I kind of felt like it could have been a little, if they went a little too far, it could have been a little cheesy, but I think they struck the right balance between, making it emotional, but not, overdone.
Yep. Totally agree.
So then, Ahsoka and Bo-Katan are off to Mandalore. They're going to try and, get Maul. Obviously, Maul has, in previous seasons, he had basically taken over Mandalore and established himself as like the leader. And he's got his own army of Mandalorians that are, kind of forced to work for him basically because he's taken over, so they don't really have a choice. But he's obviously got a lot of power that he's, from where he's at this point. So it seems like it's going to be an uphill battle in order to actually oust him from Mandalore. So, but this is really where the adventure begins with, getting the characters there and then seeing how that's going to progress.
Yeah, they storm into Mandalore, and it at first seems like it's a little bit too easy for them. They easily take over, and they find themselves chasing Maul through the sewers, and we find out that Maul is actually playing a little Sidious Jr. here. He's got a plan, and his plan, I guess, was to get Kenobi there, and Ahsoka shows up messing up his plan. Yeah,
it's and that speaks a lot to the character of Maul, because even into Rebels, all he's really hell-bent on is getting revenge on Obi-Wan. And, in the earlier episodes of Clone Wars, he's doing the same thing. Like when he first encounters Obi-Wan, since, Obi-Wan split him in half, he's kind of saying things like, yeah, now I'm going to get my revenge and this and that. And he doesn't, but he's bent on getting that revenge for a really long time. And I think that's what kept him like alive, basically, his anger, his rage, and everything for, all those years that he was, just like a, spider Darth Maul. Yeah, so like you said, it is a little convenient at first, but it's because Maul has set up a trap. He thinks it's going to be Obi-Wan. It's not Obi-Wan. It's Ahsoka. And then, that kind of changes his plan a little bit. So he retreats, and then she's basically got to catch up with him. But he kills clones along the way, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. And then I guess that leads her even farther in, and he surrounds her. That's where we are left off at the end of which either episode 9 or 10 is the cliffhanger there. And I think just the interaction with the two of them underscores just how tragic this story is in this time period we are here in the galaxy. And when we saw episode 3, us, the audience, we know where it's going. We know Anakin is going to become Darth Vader by the end. But now we have two other characters, Maul and Ahsoka, who know also what we know and are in this universe, and they have the power to change things. Maul knows what Sidious is doing, knows his plan, is kind of, he has it, 90% of the way figured out, and he lets Ahsoka in on some of the plan is to turn Anakin to be his apprentice. And they have now information that we, the audience, have had forever, and it adds a lot more to the tension. Now there's characters in universe that know that they could do something to stop this, and again, yet we know nothing will change.
Right, exactly. That's well put. One thing I didn't mention earlier is that Ahsoka's portion of the 501st has these helmets that are representative of her face. So I thought that was a pretty nice touch that they added, because obviously they're trying to give us the feels with Ahsoka coming back, and where her story is going to go. So I think that was a pretty poignant thing to do, especially seeing where things end up in the final episode.
Yeah, it kind of paints the clones in a way, almost in a better way than the Jedi. The Jedi, especially Mace Windu, seems scorned by her. I have no time for you. You're not a Jedi. You're just a citizen. And, she's still walking down the hall. She's getting saluted by other clones. They obviously, they share a camaraderie. They paint their helmets to look like her. And it just shows you, like, maybe the clones here are actually better than the Jedi. We don't know, but they certainly are treating Ahsoka a lot better.
Yeah, no, that's true. And it's funny you mentioned that because I don't think Mace has ever been like a likable character. Like, when I was as a kid, watching the prequels, I wanted him to be like a likable character. It's like it's Samuel L. Jackson. You want him to be like badass Jedi and this and that. And he does some awesome things, but just his attitude, like especially like in all of the prequels, really, like from episode 1, where he's kind of being like, oh, he's too old. And he's never really warmed towards Anakin, and you can kind of see like, I mean, I don't feel terrible when in Revenge of the Sith when Anakin makes the choice he does.
No, definitely. Him and Mace Windu and Yoda are like two sides of the Jedis, and he kind of represents, like Luke says, the hubris of the Jedi. He's cold and stern. Does everything the way the Order should do it, and he's not as compassionate as Yoda. And we get to see that in some of these episodes here in the final 4. I really like the part when Ahsoka comes in and we get to see the conversation that the Jedi are having from another point of view that they had in episode 3. It was almost line for line there, and I was just like, wow, they're doing this. This is cool, Yeah. And then again, we see how Mace Windu treats her, and then the holograms go out, and we get to see Yoda's compassionate side, and ask Ahsoka if everything's okay. It was really cool.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, yeah. I do wonder, though, how Ahsoka said, Maul said that Anakin was going to, have some role in Sidious's plan, and like, I wonder if that would have changed the outcome of what ultimately happens in Revenge of the Sith or not.
It's definitely a good question, but I feel like maybe it wouldn't. Maybe Yoda did know this whole time. They kind of figured it, and again, they thought they could handle anything, and I think we get that line from Yoda in as an episode, is it the end of 2 or in 3, where he says that they're clouded and they can't see clearly, and they're starting to see maybe their power isn't as great as they had thought.
Yeah, episode 2.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe it wouldn't have. I don't know. Imagine if they had done it that, and you're, still didn't change anything. That would still be, it's heartbreaking watching this every time.
Yeah, and it's fun. I think that speaks to the brilliance of, especially like Revenge of the Sith. Every time I watch it, it's like what's going to happen, but you kind of feel like, come on, Anakin, don't do this or don't do that. And
yes,
it's such a great movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you notice also? I think in the trailers for this episode of Clone Wars that we're talking about, when they're having the little round table, it's going on in Revenge of the Sith. I remember in the trailer that the Jedi Depa Billaba and her Padawan Kanan Jarrus were there, but then in the episode, I don't remember seeing them there.
No, they were there. I can't remember which one, but I remember seeing them. I had watched, I think these final 4 I would watch twice each. So yeah, I remember seeing that.
Okay, I kind of felt like, that was weird if they weren't there. But
it might have been faster than it was edited in the trailer. So.
Yeah, it seemed a little different. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. So anyway, let's talk about this duel, this showdown between Maul and Ahsoka. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot leading up to this. We knew that this was coming. It was kind of focused on a good bit in the marketing for Clone Wars Season 7. And when we get right down to it, this is a duel unlike any we've ever seen before, isn't it? Oh, yeah.
I guess I gather from watching stuff on the internet that this was all motion captured, and Ray Park did the motion capture for Maul, reprised it again. But yeah, it was very fast paced, well choreographed. It looked amazing, and you can totally see Ahsoka's growth and how she is able to hold her own and actually defeat Maul in the end. It was brilliant.
Yeah, and the motion capture for Ahsoka was done by Lauren Kim, who plays the armorer in Mandalorian. So
that's right. Yep.
The stunt person for her. But yeah, so this whole thing was motion capture. I don't know that that's ever been done for animated like TV series, but I mean, it really brought a lot of life to the fight, because when you're watching it and you're seeing Maul, I mean, it feels a lot like Phantom Menace Maul, just the way he's moving, the way that he's, even the most subtle things, like the way his fingers are moving or the way that his head's tilting during the fight, like all of that just seemed very organic. And it kind of makes you like wish that the whole entirety of Clone Wars, like any of the duels were like that, because it's just so cool.
Yeah, definitely. again, like I said earlier, the animation, they just stepped it up here on season 7, and it looks the same. It fits in with the series, but it's beautiful. All those little touches that you're mentioning in there, it just really adds to it.
Yeah, no, that's 100% true. And you know what really stood out, and I'm really bummed out we didn't get to see him a little bit more, but when the first episode came back, when we saw like that little clip of Grievous, like, just chilling there, like he looks so real. It's like, I wish we could have gotten more of that, but yeah, they really did step it up, because I think one of the strengths of Clone Wars has always been how realistic it looked. I mean, even going back to 2008, the lighting and everything, it was, and Lucas has said, he wanted it to look like a film. Even though it was animated, he wanted it to look like live action as best he could. And just the way they lit it and the way that they, the movement and all of that was intended to be realistic. But like you're saying, they really stepped it up for this last season, because it just has gotten so much better. And yeah, we are six years apart from previous, but so that's part of the reason. But I mean, just the way it's evolved and changed, and it's a little heartbreaking that we're not going to get more of it.
Yeah. Again, the technologies have advanced, and hopefully there's another. I think there's rumors of another animated series on the horizon, and if they can continue this art style, which I think is my favorite art style of the animated series. I'd be down for that. It'd be amazing.
Yeah, totally. Because I mean, I enjoyed Rebels. I thought it was a good story. Resistance, not really. I mean, it was very filler. It's like, I mean, there's nothing like, the thing about Clone Wars and Rebels is that they do tie into the films, and they do broaden, the overall story of Star Wars. But Resistance really doesn't. Like, you can totally ignore Resistance, and it won't really matter. But when you watch Clone Wars and you watch Rebels, that's definitely not the case.
Yeah. Yep. I agree.
So, so no, this was a great fight. I really, it was kind of awe-inspiring just watching the choreography, watching, the way that they were interacting, the dialogue between the two of them. And it was interesting how, like, for a moment, Ahsoka was, like, contemplating, like, joining Maul and helping him to do whatever he wanted to do. Yes. Mm-hmm. But then, he started talking bad about Anakin. So she was like, no way, Anakin's not going to do that. And, then she fights him. But that's another interesting thing, because you just wonder, like, if he hadn't said that and she would have joined them, how would that have affected the outcome of Revenge of the Sith? We'll never know.
Yeah, she's definitely grown and matured in the way she's speaking with Maul and stuff. But you still get that she's the kid's sister, and that love that she has for Anakin. It takes all, and it was really great. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was good stuff. So awesome fight. Eventually, she's able to capture Maul. Mm-hmm. And then this was the end of episode 10, wasn't it? Where the duel was going on? Okay. So,
yes. Oh, and that title we forgot to mention, Phantom Apprentice. That was amazing. When I saw that, I was like, yes.
Yeah, great title. Yeah, I think all the episode titles this season were pretty great.
Oh yeah, yep.
So that's kind of where that wraps up. They capture Maul, and he's tied up, and he's like, just let me die. So Maul's a really interesting character, and I want to talk a little bit about Maul when we wrap things up here. But it's just really interesting to see, where he's kind of in a way, and I know he's kind of been being manipulated at this point by Sidious, but he's in a way kind of at the height of like any power he's ever had. But then, at the end of the day, when all's said and done and he's captured, he just kind of wants to die. So we'll talk about that more in a little bit, but it's interesting to take note of.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so going into the next episode, this is kind of where things like really get down to business in terms of where we are with Revenge of the Sith, correct?
Oh, yeah. Can we just talk a little bit about the music? When episode 11 starts off, and
yes, let's do that.
The synth is in there, and just it gets real ominous, and things are getting heavy. We're getting closer to Order 66, and it just creates this real feel of dread over the last 2 episodes. That really worked for me.
Yeah, totally. You're definitely right. The soundtrack was great. I mean, throughout the entire series, but yeah, like you're saying, particularly at this point, there's a lot of cues that are happening, like visual cues and audio cues that are occurring to kind of cue us into where things are going. And, Order 66 is coming pretty soon. And, just the tone of the whole, the way that it starts off, it's really getting you prepared emotionally. Like, it's coming, you don't want it to come, but there's not really anything you can do about it to stop it, because it's here. We're at that pivotal point.
Yeah, and like you're saying, you want Clone Wars to go on and on, but you know that we have to hit this point, and that's again, it just adds to the sadness of the whole time they're speaking of how they're going to end this war, and Anakin wants things back to normal, and you just know it's never going to get where they think it's going to go, and that's again more tragedy, and just it's hard to watch, but it's so good at the same time.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, just like sitting here reflecting on it, it's pretty powerful stuff, and I think this is the episode, right, where at this point Rex and Ahsoka are kind of they've succeeded in capturing Maul. They're on their way back to Coruscant. Maul's in this weird like force container type thing, like
Silence of the Lambs style or something.
Yeah, and he's being transported back to Coruscant, where I guess he's gonna, I don't know what they're planning to do with him, really. What are they gonna do, put him on trial, I guess? But yeah, he's on his way back to Coruscant. They're all going back. I know we didn't really touch a whole lot on the Mandalorians themselves, but I just got to give a quick shout out to like how awesome it was to see the Mandalorians again, to see Mandalore again.
Yeah, definitely. And we got to see I'm sorry, I'm having like a brain fart. Sabine's mom. Sorry. We get to see Sabine's mom, which is really cool. Tied some things into Rebels and everything. And I hope that we get more with like the Mandalore Jedi war and see. That would be really cool to see how that all went down and that ancient technology that they have and how it was used. And you get to see again some of that stuff in like Rebels and things. And I hope they touch more on that in the future.
Yeah, and just kind of branching off that real quick, like I mentioned earlier, we saw Kessel in previous episodes. So I think had Clone Wars obviously not happened, when it did, in 2020, we wouldn't have seen things tie into these more recent, parts of Star Wars, like Rebels or Solo or, any of these different medium or different projects. So, pretty cool little things that don't really add a whole lot to it, but they're just kind of, little nods to the other aspects of the universe we've seen in more recent years. I really like the conversation that, Maul and Ahsoka, or Maul, that Rex and Ahsoka are having here, on the bridge of this, not Star Destroyer, but this Republic cruiser that they're on as they're headed back to Coruscant. And it's just kind of an acknowledgement of the history the two have had together as characters, as friends, and how their relationship has gone from that very first, when you very first see like Ahsoka and Rex, like early on in the first season, or maybe it was even the Clone Wars film where Rex says something like, "Oh, you're kind of like a newbie, and experience outweighs rank or whatever." I think he says something like experience like determines like rank or something. But here they are all these years later, and the relationship dynamic is just so different.
Yeah, they're like equals, and they're expressing their friendship and the optimism. It looks like they're getting close to the end of the war and all this. And it's funny that you say that about a Star Destroyer, because I feel like the aesthetic in this show, in these last episodes, it really does look like it's moving more towards the Empire. And it feels like they're on like an Empire bridge or something. And it's just, you get the sense we're moving forward here. We're getting closer to Order 66. And it's,
Yeah, and it's just, it's a crazy switch, because they're having this conversation. Rex has to go to take a call from Palpatine, and, 5 seconds later, it's like whatever just happened is totally out the door, because the situation has done a complete 180.
Yep. And we see Rex it gets the order, and he's able to, I guess he had a heads up from Fives. And he was able to, just for a few seconds, hold himself off, and you see him drop the helmet, and it's real sad. And then he starts to try to kill Ahsoka, and we see the beginning here of Order 66. And I was wondering how this was going to work, and if Ahsoka would have even been part of it. But it seems like, I believe they mentioned something that they're going to kill Maul also later on. So it seems like it's just not Jedi, but all Force users, basically.
Yeah. And I mean, that would make sense when you think about Palpatine's like grand plan that Maul talks about. It's like, Maul doesn't know the details of how it's going to happen. He kind of figures it out like during the course of, these, this episode, but, these last couple episodes. But Maul knows that the plan is ultimately to wipe out, any Force sensitive and consolidate power to the Emperor. And but he doesn't really know the details of how it's going to come about. So it's interesting to see his like own self-discovery of, that how brilliant his plan actually ended up being. But yeah, it's just to see it play out the way that it does. And, the hologram comes in and, it's Ian McDiarmid's voice. And, it's really emotional. I mean, I'm even thinking about it. It's like, it's because, we know that, like you said, that this is what's going to happen. It's like, it's the same thing when we were watching the prequels. We knew what was going to happen. We knew that Anakin was going to become Darth Vader, but then when it actually like starts happening and you see it like ultimately happen and he has the suit and everything, it's like you feel a lot of, great sense of dread and, sadness. And, you really wish that it wasn't happening. You knew it was going to happen. And the same thing is true for Clone Wars. We know where it was going. But then to actually see it like unfold and how it happens, it's just, it's heart-wrenching in its own way.
Yeah, I think I told you when we were talking about the episode that it did make me feel the same way after leaving Revenge of the Sith. And after that movie, I was depressed for like days, just like, why Anakin, why? And you knew the whole time that what was going to happen, but it was just done so well. And this too. I feel a little down now talking about it, but it was so good. But it brings me down. It's just, the Republic, the Jedi, everything gone into this dark time.
It's like they say, like, I think tequila is the only alcohol that's an upper and all the rest are downers. But it is a down. And I remember too, I was in my first year of like college, like away from home, when Revenge of the Sith came out, and I saw it at a midnight screening, and then after I got out, my dad called and he's like, oh, how, because my dad worked like, graveyard shift, and he was like, how was it? And I was like, oh, Dad, I don't even want to talk about it. Like, I felt really like, I mean, we knew it was going to happen, but it was just such a bummer to see it happen and know that it was over. And you're right. Same thing here. It was definitely a bummer, definitely a downer. And although it was great and it was an awesome experience, just the whole culmination of it and the way it transpired was, it had a bit of an emotional toll to it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Ahsoka is able to cut her way out of it. She dodges all the blasts and escapes into the ship, and she releases Maul as a distraction. And I don't know if you want to talk about this part here. Real Rogue One kind of like callback here with Maul walking down the hallway. That whole scene was just epic.
Yeah, that was so. Basically, Ahsoka makes a choice to set Maul free, kind of to help her out, but not really to help her out, but more so to help like her escape, I guess, with Rex, or do what she needs to do, like to help Rex. It's crazy, and I know I mentioned I want to talk about Maul in a little bit, but he like just the sheer like power that he has, even though he's like half of what he once was, like it's freaking ridiculous. Like he's like, and I mean, he conveys it so well, like despite all the crap he's been through, and like Maul, just like he's still like that raging, like crazy Sith we see in the Phantom Menace.
Oh yes. Yeah, you get to see how powerful he is, and I always think it's very interesting to see Force users not using lightsabers and just totally dominating like he does, and he's able to take out all those clones in the hallway, and he makes his way into the hyperdrive room and just brings down the engines. And I mean, I guess he had this sort of planned that he was going to bring the ship down, and it was his way of escaping. And it was just so cool to see that.
Yeah, it was. Visually, it was just a really awesome thing to see. And I don't think we touched on it, but we also hear some callbacks, don't we? Like right before Order 66 is going to go down, like from Revenge of the Sith, right? We hear some of the dialogue, like Mace with Anakin, and Anakin like turning to the dark side.
Oh yeah, that's right. And I think some of the audio from Episode 3, we hear Hayden Christensen, don't we? Yeah. And it was just, I guess Ahsoka could feel that, and again adds to the heartbreak we keep talking about, and so many things in this.
Yeah. So I mean, she knows that something's going on. She knows that Maul, like whatever he was saying, there's some truth to it. She doesn't know the extent of it, I don't think, but she knows that something's going on with Anakin. He's like in pain, and something's kind of like when Yoda kind of catches that glimpse of it through the Force in Attack of the Clones, where he knows that Anakin's going through something bad. It's kind of the same thing. So she's really like feeling like something's going on. I don't know what it is, but this is when everything's going on. So she doesn't really have time to process it because Order 66 gets carried out. And, it's basically nonstop action from here up until basically the end of the series, the next couple episodes. So, so let's talk about how she's able to fix Captain Rex, or Commander Rex at this point. So we already know from previous seasons that it's a chip implant, like in their brains, that so that they can comply with Order 66. It was in the beginning of the Lost Missions where we kind of see like where there's errors with the chips, right? Like they're kind of malfunctioning, and some of the clones are turning on the Jedi prematurely, and so the chip is there, the inhibitor chip's there to kind of make them comply, right? I guess if they had complete free will, they might not do it or comply with Order 66. So the purpose of the chip is there so that they will carry it out without, questions being asked, or, they receive that order and they comply. So to basically Rex has this chip, but he's kind of aware, like you were saying earlier, that, that the chip's there, but he doesn't really know the full extent of why it's there. So when Order 66 goes down, she has to, she gets the droids to help her, the astromech droids, and they bring up the file where they show, that he's kind of like submitting an inquiry as to, what's going on with the chip, but he knows it's going to fall on deaf ears, and, but he thinks it might be used for some sinister purpose, at some point. So she puts him under, it's kind of like a CAT scan type thing, isn't it? Where she's trying to like figure out where the chip is. It doesn't come up. And then, finally she kind of has to start sort of like praying, I guess, like over him. It's just the same way we see in Rogue One with, Chirrut Imwe.
Yeah.
And she's able to find it. And then how quick is Rex's surgery to get that chip removed?
Pretty quick. I mean, they're in the middle of a firefight and he's able to pop up, and he's even got a little Band-Aid on his head there for the rest of the episodes. But I mean, they figure it out, and I thought this part was cool here, realizing that Rex realizes that he can't go back to the institution, almost in the same way Ahsoka can't go back to the Jedi, even a little bit of the way Anakin feels, and he's kind of a traitor now to the Republic, and he realizes his true allegiance is with Ahsoka, and he's ready to turn on his brothers.
Yeah, it's I kind of was wondering, like, what if Rex had just like told the clones, like, oh hey, I got a new order from the Emperor. Now he's saying, he wants to bring her back alive. Like, if they would have believed him, or I mean, I know
at the end of the next episode, he tries to talk to Jesse about that, right? And Jesse is they're like, no way, that we're doing what we need to do, or you're a traitor,
Yeah, he tries to reason with Jesse.
But I kind of wondered why he couldn't just say like, oh, took care of her, like when they come into the door, like I killed her, like she's dead.
Yeah, that's true. that it could have also gone that way. I guess then they would have gone to Coruscant though, and it would have been a whole different. She might have not have escaped Coruscant. I guess she could have hid with Trace and Rafa, but who knows? But yeah, so Order 66 has been carried out. So now Rex is trying to help Ahsoka, and he's realized, okay, this is a whole different dynamic for him. Like you're saying, he's turning against his brothers, and we know from the previous seasons that the clones are very close, and they're all clones, so they treat each other, as clones, right? They're all brothers, and so he makes this choice that he's to help. He cares about Ahsoka, and in order to help her, he's going to have to go against his brothers, and he's going to have to help her fight their way out of there so that they can escape from the Republic cruiser. But at the same time, you have Maul that's going around wreaking havoc, and he destroys the hyperdrive engines. So they basically get to a point where they're just sort of stuck. So they have, for a while, they're just kind of having to figure out, like, how are we going to get out of this alive?
Yeah, there's like one ship left, I guess. They hatched that plan, and they got to stun a lot of the clones, and they're trying to get to the ship, and then Maul actually beats them to it, and we see that awesome part where we realize how powerful Ahsoka is, where she's holding the shuttle in the air and holding back Maul. We see the clones are just swarming everywhere, and Maul finally he does get away, and they have to come up with a second plan to get off the ship. And they really, Rex and Ahsoka are really relying on each other here to get through this.
Yeah, and this whole like action sequence, this is where like Rex tries to reason with the clones. Then he's like, "Oh, I guess it ain't gonna happen because they're not gonna give any leeway on this, and we're gonna have to fight our way through it." And it's just a crazy thing because they're up against these insurmountable odds. There's all these like it's really a whole battalion of clones that they're going up against, and they have to incorporate the help of the droids in order to change they pull those levers so that the platforms go up and down. And so we got to give a shout out to these droids, because had they not been there, the outcome may have been a little bit different in the end.
Yeah, but the one that's like Chopper, voiced by Dave Filoni, was real neat to see.
Yeah, he even had the little like saucer at the top of his dome. Yeah, that was cool. And lots of original, like A New Hope R2D2 sounds too in this episode, I noticed.
Yeah, a lot of great sound, just all around. You're in Star Wars.
Yeah. So Maul escapes and the Republic attacks shuttle, and I was trying to read into like Maul. Like, it seems like he doesn't. He's always been all for himself, and the same is true here. He's trying to escape. He doesn't. He doesn't give Ahsoka a chance. He just wants to go where he wants to go. Right. So. Do you get the sense that he feels any like regret, or is he just kind of like when he's in the cockpit and about to head off into hyperspace? Do you feel like he's just like glad to get out of there?
Oh yeah, I don't think he had any regret, and he has that snarky line of "You wanted this chaos" or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And he always just mainly thinks about himself, I guess, and the person he only ever really cared about was his brother. So yeah, that's how I feel.
Yeah, it's good old Maul. So the huge battle inside this Republic cruiser, and ultimately they're out of hyperspace because the drives have been disabled by Maul. So they kind of end up like at this planet, and then the visuals on this are absolutely striking. You see the ship coming in like into the atmosphere of this moon or planet or whatever it is. And, it's breaking apart, and, they're still having this huge battle, in the docking bay of this cruiser.
It was very much what I guess Anakin went through just a few days before this, right? The ship crashing down, breaking apart, and Rex is able to get the one ship and to get out of there and to land safely on the planet. And we really see an awesome side of Ahsoka here, where she's really sees the humanity in these clones, and she's not willing to kill them so that she may live, which is kind of funny because Rex is kind of more, I guess it's the soldier in him. He's more serious, and he's ready to fight his brothers now. And the ship crash lands on the planet, and we have a little bit of a montage. We fast forward, and really great here. Do you want to talk about what happens at the end here with the clones and their bodies?
Yeah. Just real quick though, it's interesting. Yeah. Like Ahsoka didn't want to kill them, but they all died anyway, didn't they?
Well, not by her hand, I guess.
Not by her hand, but Maul certainly took out a chunk of them. She let Maul free, and then the crash. The rest of them got taken out. So
that's right.
But yeah, no. So finally they escape, and there's a whole like classic Clone Wars sort of like moment where Rex is trying to catch like Ahsoka. She's like flying through the atmosphere, and this is the kind of stuff that we saw in earlier seasons where you just have these really like hyper-powered Jedi that are doing all kinds of crazy things. And she's been shot a couple times, hasn't she? Like aboard the cruiser, she was shot. So, she's not at full power, but he's able to capture. He brings her into the Y-wing bomber, I think it is, and So by the time this ship crashes into this planet, so we have all the bodies, and I think what you're talking about is how they were buried, or how they
So like Rex was coming back with the shovel. It looks like they put all their helmets up on pikes and stuff, and Ahsoka really reminded me a lot of the finale of Rebels. She has the hood on and just staring off, and we see her drop her lightsaber, and it's really powerful stuff here. Even though it's animated, it doesn't feel it.
No, it's certainly not like your cookie cutter like Disney Channel, Cartoon Network, like TV series. Because I mean, you're seeing like all these graves of bodies that have been dug. You're seeing the clone helmets just kind of like positioned above their graves, and it reminded me a little bit of Solo, where they bury Vel on that one planet, and she's they put like and Rio, and they put like their personal articles like kind of just hanging above the graves. So yeah, it kind of signifies in a way like the death of the clones and the rebirth of something else. Yeah. And what we get in this next like final scene in this entire 7-season series kind of puts the cap on everything that we've seen over the course of the series, and where things are headed next in terms of the overall saga.
Yeah, it was. I didn't know what was happening when they transitioned to this here. You start to see it's clearly the Empire. They've made the full transition. I'm thinking, is this Hoth? We see the probe droids and stuff. And I think it was really cool to see, I guess like we did in Rise of Skywalker, see like planet changing a little bit. The season had changed, time had passed, there's snow covering everything. And then we get a glimpse of the man himself, Darth Vader, making his patrol. And he reaches down and he finds a lightsaber in the snow, and he ignites it, and it's Ahsoka's blade, and it's just really beautiful stuff here. And yeah,
this was crazy. Like none of us knew what the final like moments of the series were going to be, and I mean it makes sense to put a cap on it by showing a little bit of a time jump. We don't know exactly how long it is, but obviously we're led to believe that it is a little bit of a time jump because the planet is undergoing a different season. Like when we first get there, it's kind of like a desert. Now it's like snow covered. So, there is a bit of a delay between the end of, when we see Ahsoka and Rex part ways, which in and of itself is a really kind of emotional thing because, these two characters we've followed for so long are going their separate ways, trying to basically keep out of the radar of the Empire. It's, when they show that Imperial shuttle landing and you see the probe droids, you see the snowtroopers and stormtroopers, and you're just filled with like this a little bit of an overwhelming feeling. It's like it's you're thinking it, you knew, like I said earlier, you knew where it was going, but you didn't really know how it was going to happen. And once it does happen, it's kind of heart-wrenching. And then that's when the man himself steps off the shuttle and then like walks off out into the field to see the remnants of this cruiser. And
I wonder, one of my little theories, it looks like enough time has passed. We see Vader has his red lightsaber hilt on his side. We see a lot of the helmets are very weathered, the paint coming off and stuff. And I'm just wondering if Vader was probably, we know he went through the galaxy hunting down the Jedi that escaped Order 66. Did he save Ahsoka for last? And then it seemed like he let her go at the end, like maybe was this the last one? So much time had passed, and he kind of drops the saber, or no, he takes the saber with him, but he looks up and we see the bird flying through the air, and I guess that's meant to symbolize the daughter side of the Force. But so maybe it was something along those lines. Maybe he was saving her for last, and he finally figured she was dead or something and lets her go.
That's a really good point. I do wonder if that's what he was trying to, that's what he was doing, because, obviously from the comics and stuff, we know that, he went on to hunt down the Jedi, that remained. And yeah, maybe like some part of him where, Anakin Skywalker lived on, like, he didn't want to look for Ahsoka. He was hoping maybe in some part that she had escaped. And so maybe this is, like you're saying, sometime later. I mean, even thinking about her lightsaber, it looked like it was pretty rusted.
Yeah. And just the shot there when Vader looks up and you can see through, he's got the red lenses from like A New Hope, and you can see Anakin's eyes. That was really great. Everything for him kind of came full circle. Did he know he was on this path? Did he remember, the vision that he had? What was going on there? And it was cool. It was a lot like in A New Hope, where you could see David Prowse's eyes and stuff. They really nailed the aesthetic.
Yeah, it was really subtle. I mean, you obviously did have that very Rogue One, A New Hope looking Vader, with the red lenses and, the costume and everything. But, I mean, he looked very sinister. But, you could tell that beneath that, was still, this guy, Anakin. And, like, yeah, just the way he looks up at Mariah, the bird. He just like, I don't know, like I don't know. You could sort of get the sense that yeah, he's evil. Time has passed and he's in a different place, but there's like a glimmer of what was there before, maybe what's still there underneath.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's just like a slight glimmer of that. But when he picks up the saber, he lights it, and then he rather than toss it, he takes it. So I feel like they were trying to give you that, that sort of feeling that, even though this is sad and this is where his character is gone, there is some part of him that is still intact, as little as it may be there, I kind of feel like there's something there.
Definitely. Yeah. Great way to end the series. We make it through episode 3 and we're into the Empire times, and we get a cap with Vader and Ahsoka, and so here we are, and I had a lot of fun with it. And like I said, some of the things felt like filler at the time through season 7, but then when you look back on it, you realize no, it wasn't, and it really all had a plan and a purpose, and it really came together great in the end.
It did. How awesome seeing elements of the Empire and Darth Vader in Clone Wars animation. I mean, that was just...
Mm-hmm. And he looks so much better than in Rebels.
Oh,
He was kind of like a pointy, weird helmet in Rebels, and it just looked great,
Yeah, I wonder if these were clones that were wearing like the Stormtrooper and Snowtrooper armor,
Mm-hmm.
or if it was long enough where it was like a mix of like recruits and stuff at this point. Like, because like I said, we don't really know. Like you said, it seems like there's a significant time jump because, it just seems like, such a different, scenario than it was, in the previous scene. But, we obviously don't know, but it's in any case, it's just really powerfully done, just masterfully done. And the execution of it all. And, when the last like shot is of the clone trooper helmet with Ahsoka's markings, and in the reflection, you see Vader walking away. It's just, just walk like, just like the metaphorical like separation of master and apprentice there, like they're moving away from it. It's really powerful stuff. And I was really like you said, it was really sad to see it and how it played out and unfolded, but at the same time it was satisfying to see that the series concluded. And I felt like when we're watching the Skywalker saga, the Rise of Skywalker, and we kind of that's where we see the Skywalker saga is complete, but I feel like it kind of wasn't, and maybe it was the overall like Star Wars saga didn't really feel complete until this moment in this last episode of Clone Wars season 7.
Yeah. I kind of look at these last 4 episodes as their own movie, and I would say it's on par with episode 3. It's so good. And I don't even think of it as being animated. It's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. It's just the execution. Everything is so awesome, and I'm sad that it's over, but and I'm kind of sad too that we don't have all the great toys that we should be having right now. Like if this were like 10 years ago, like all the toys that we would have to go along with it, like we're just missing so many things, and I hope that we get a lot of that stuff soon, because who doesn't want an Ahsoka season 7 figure,
I know,
6-inch scale or 3 3/4 inch scale, or Captain Rex or Maul or Bo-Katan or Mandalorians in Darth Maul armor, like any of that stuff.
Yeah, awesome. I don't know what's going on. I've said before, I get sad that the 5 POA 3 3/4 inch has gone away, because we had, I guess the last of the figures were the Resistance ones, right? And you had to think these would have sold a lot better than the Resistance ones if they had done some Clone Wars style in the animation style, and getting stuff like in the style of this would have been awesome.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Such a missed opportunity, but I guess we're in different times as well. Not just with everything going on in the world right now, but just the toy industry as a whole. It's way different, and obviously with Star Wars toys, even mass marketed ones by Hasbro, they're focusing a lot more on the collector now than they ever have before. Here's hoping that I know they're focusing on the Empire Strikes Back right now, the 40th anniversary, but here's hoping that the second half of the year is going to be all Clone Wars, all Mandalorian, all stuff maybe they're catching up on from Rise of Skywalker. I'll be completely down with all of that if that's what their plan is ultimately.
Yeah, let's hope. I mean, kids still do love toys. I don't really believe that toys aren't for kids anymore, and it is a little weird. I've heard some of the things from Hasbro that they're just focusing directly on the collector, that they want the collector to tell them what to make now. Just make some cool toys that kids want to play with, and they'll sell.
Yeah, totally. So let's talk a little bit about character development. I think we already touched on Anakin pretty well, but I did want to go back to Maul and how he's changed as a character since we first got introduced to him, 21 years ago in The Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
Where, you don't really get a whole lot of you don't get any of his backstory, really. All you know is that he's the apprentice of the Emperor of at the time, Darth Sidious. Mm-hmm. That's really all you know. You know that he's like his apprentice. He's out there, carrying out these missions to, get the Queen to sign the treaty and this and that. I mean, that's, he fights the Jedi and he kind of serves that purpose. Then he gets, I'm doing air quotes, he gets killed by Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
But having him come back in Clone Wars, I know there were a lot of groans at first, like, oh, what a cheap move. They're bringing back Darth Maul. Mm-hmm. But it really has transformed not only Clone Wars, not only Maul as a character, but like the entirety of like the Star Wars saga, like all that they've been able to contribute through his character to Star Wars, hasn't it? Definitely.
He's grown a lot as a character. His name is Maul. He was just kind of like the enforcer sent out there to do Palpatine's bidding and stuff. But the relationship with his mother and his brother, and focusing him more on what he really wants, which is, revenge on Kenobi, and seeing him, leading the crime syndicates and the, taking over Mandalore, and then eventually heading up Crimson Dawn. He definitely grew. It's something that Star Wars needed, even though it didn't know it needed it at the time. And it definitely isn't eye-rolling anymore. He's one of the most beloved characters in the saga, and for good reason.
Yeah. No, he's grown a lot, and when we first see him in Clone Wars, and he's kind of just like this crazy like guy who's had to survive off of his rage and eating rats and all the weird stuff he was doing with his spider legs, and just like seeing him grow over the course of Clone Wars, from that to going to Dathomir and, seeing like, the, what were they, like Sith witches or, like just seeing how, he met up with his brother and, that put him on a new course for revenge against Obi-Wan, but also like bringing him back into the fold of everything that was going on, and then having him, conquer Mandalore. And then, I mean, it's just wild. Like we there's no other character like that in the Star Wars saga that has gone from basically being like dead. I mean, for all intents and purposes, he was dead, and then being able to go and take over an entire like planet. I mean, you could argue that Sidious did that and Vader did that, but it's not really the same, because their purposes throughout the saga have been different, and the way that they have come into power has been radically different. But I mean, Maul was basically dead, and just through his sheer, like, will for revenge and anger and hatred and everything, he was able to do all these crazy things that have really, like, propelled his character, like, all the way basically up until close to the original trilogy, as we see him, like, at the end of Rebels.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like I said, he got focused, he knew what he wanted, and I don't know, he definitely walks the Sith side, the dark side and stuff, but I never really think of him as being so bad like I do Dooku or Sidious. You know what I mean? Like he's just out for revenge, and he lets the hate guide him and stuff, and he really is kind of like the opposite side of the Jedi, what they should be, and it's cool to get that perspective, and it's not really the Dooku and the Darth Vader and the Darth Sidious side.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, he's not like, I mean, I do see him that way in The Phantom Menace. Like, I do see him as like a Sith, and like, he's obviously evil. He's obviously one of the bad guys, but he becomes like a sympathetic character once, you do see him in Clone Wars. And I mean, he's obviously doing bad things. He's obviously using the dark side of the Force, but you do feel for him, all that he's gone through, and how he comes into power. But then Sidious kills his brother, and I mean, you really you connect to him differently than you did just by him being in Phantom Menace. And then like he obviously like accumulates a lot of power, and he obviously is ambitious, but it doesn't seem like his demand for power, it's not the same as like the Emperor. The Emperor wants power for the sake of power. Like Maul doesn't seem to do it because he wants to as much as because he can do it, you know? And I mean, like, even when he's taken over like Mandalore, it's like, you can tell, I mean, like he's content and stuff, but it doesn't seem like that's necessarily what he wants. He just kind of does it because he can.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then, you know, obviously he's lost his power at the end of Clone Wars, but then, you know, we see him pop up later. We see him in Solo, and he's kind of, you know, running things behind the scenes again, and I presumably he loses it at some point, because then when we see him in Rebels, like, there's no hint of any of that anymore. So
yeah, there's still more story to be told with this character, and bring it on. You know, he's one of the best parts of Clone Wars, aside from maybe Ahsoka and Anakin and the clones. But yeah, I'm so glad they put him in there. You know, I'm glad they didn't let. It was one of the things that George does. He does what he wants to do, and he doesn't let other people tell them there's no reaction here to the fans, and he put the character in there, and it turned out great.
It did. It was really great to have him back. And, yeah, I mean, we just see him a lot differently now than we did, you know, 21 years ago. So awesome stuff. Also Ahsoka. I mean, like we said earlier, you know, she's come a long way. Those early seasons, season 1, the Clone Wars film, people were complaining. They were like, you know, how could Anakin have an apprentice if it was never like alluded to in Revenge of the Sith or Attack of the Clones? And it's kind of out of left field, but those thoughts have kind of gone away, because she's really developed, and not even just now, but even when, you know, the earlier seasons were progressing, you know, up to her departure from the Jedi Order. I mean, people really changed their attitude towards the character, and and then definitely even into Rebels, you know, like you see her arc continue. Like, it's just it's again it's a 180 from where, you know, she started to where she ended up.
Yeah, just watching her grow. I remember starting the series, and even in this Clone Wars, she's very annoying in the first season, but she really does, even into the course of Rebels, just grows into a leader and a woman, and real mature. And I mean, it's awesome to see a character portrayed like that, especially a female character.
Yeah.
And everybody loves her now. A lot of people, you ask who's your favorite character, and a lot of people are going to say Ahsoka. So. Yeah, definitely had a big impact on culturally and Star Wars in general.
Yeah, and you know, I'm at times I'm tempted to say that she's my favorite character as well, because of the arc that she's had, because of all the adventures we've been on with her over all this time. I mean, she'd definitely be in the top 5. I definitely, you know, she'd definitely be there. She's an amazing character, and she's come a long way. Her story is amazing, and I don't think we're done with Ahsoka. I definitely think there's going to be more, and you know, I'm just looking forward to, no matter what, you know, kind of medium that may, you know, come about in.
Well, there's I guess there are rumors, I'm not sure they're confirmed, that she might be in Mandalorian season 2, played by Rosario Dawson, but I'm not sure that's been confirmed yet. It could still be a rumor, but fingers crossed, we'll get more of her, maybe even live action.
Yeah, because she's still out there. We know that at this point in Mandalorian, she is out there. You know, last we saw her, she was with Sabine, like hunting for, or, you know, searching for Ezra and Thrawn, right? So she's out there, and you know, we don't know where her story ultimately ends. So, you know, there's definitely tales to be told, and, you know, with both her and Maul, like you were saying earlier. So, yeah, here's hoping we get more of that. And yeah, great stuff.
Oh, yeah. Clone Wars just added so much to the Star Wars lore, made me much more of a fan than I would have been just watching the movies. So if anybody's been sitting here listening to us talk about this for this long now, if you haven't checked the entire Clone Wars out, go back. It's on Disney Plus now. Watch it. There's a lot of great character growth, and you get to see a lot of things that you wouldn't see in the films, and you're really missing out if you guys are not watching the animated side of Star Wars.
It adds so much to the overall Star Wars saga. I mean, yeah, if you've never seen Clone Wars, or you've only seen parts of it, I mean, yeah, you owe it to yourself to go back. And the episodes are, 22 minutes, I think? So
yeah,
most of them. So yeah, I mean, if you watch one a day, you know, 22 minutes. And it might take a while because there's a lot of Clone Wars, but it's so well worth it. Just make sure you're following that chronological, you know, guide that's on StarWars.com. We'll throw a link to it in the show notes if anybody's interested in that. But yeah, great stuff. It's added so much to the overall series. It's added to how much I love Star Wars, and you know, just when you don't think that's really possible to love Star Wars more than you already do, you know, Clone Wars has really made me love Star Wars so much more. And it's been an amazing ride, and I'm gonna miss it, but these episodes will always live on, and like I said, here's hoping that we get more merchandise. Here's hoping that these stories continue to live on in new ways, and we continue to explore some of these characters and get more information about them. So I think there's things to look forward to, and we'll always appreciate what Clone Wars added to the mythology of Star Wars and what it brought to the table, and how it was just this really insanely fantastically done series, just every way about it, visually, in terms of the audio, the music, and characters, and all of it, just the whole entirety of Clone Wars and the entirety of Star Wars that it added to it. It's pretty legendary.
Oh yeah.
Well, Dave, this has been a blast. I know we've gone pretty long here, longer than we probably imagined we would, talking about Clone Wars. But it's been awesome. Where can our listeners go to find you online?
On most social media platforms, you can find me under Jurassic Dave 93 on Twitter, on Instagram, which is where I do most of my work, and YouTube. I have a YouTube channel now if you just want to watch a very few amount of videos about Jurassic Park toys or whatnot. But yeah, hit me up, send me some comments if you guys want to talk about Star Wars or anything else in pop culture and stuff. I'm more than happy to talk to anyone.
Awesome. So I'll place links to your socials in the show notes as well. And thanks for coming on. It's been a blast, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future.
All right. Thanks a lot, Victoria.
And that's a wrap for this episode. Victoria's Cantina began on YouTube, and you can find plenty of toy content on the Victoria's Cantina YouTube channel. We are also on Instagram, constantly showcasing toy photography at Victoria's Cantina, as well as Facebook at Victoria's Cantina, and on Twitter, ranting and raving about toys and other nonsense at Vic's Cantina. For fun and random toy clips, follow us on TikTok at Victoria's Cantina. Got a question or something you'd like to share with us? Drop us a line in the fax machine. You can email victoriascantina@yahoo.com. If you are so inclined and wish to drop a coin in the tip jar, we are on Patreon, where you can gain greater access to the channel while helping to keep the content rolling. For VC branded merchandise such as t-shirts, ball caps, mugs, and other fun stuff, visit us on Teespring and TeePublic. Links to all of these magical places can be found in the show notes. Do you got a minute or two? If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, please leave us a 5-star rating and drop a brief review explaining why you enjoy the show. As always, I'm Victoria, and no matter where you're listening out in the galaxy, I'd like to thank you for tuning in to the Cantina Chatter podcast.